Welcome to a video on HelloID Provisioning. I would like to show you how to create a custom source connector. Source connector is pretty important because it allows you to import data from your HR system and use that to create persons with contract data in HelloID, which you can then feed to your business rules, and hopefully that will result in entitlements being granted or revoked. And that leads to all kinds of processes being executed on target systems. So when you create a new source system, you have the plus here, and you choose for a PowerShell source. That has the that makes sure that you can execute your own custom PowerShell. Now I've already created it here. You don't have many options when you do this. You can basically do next, finish, and then it will create a boilerplate source system with two test persons, a Jane Doe and a John Doe. But when you start to customize the source system, that's what I want to show you. So let's go into the configuration of this source system. Now the system contains two script portions. The first script portion, this one, needs to import persons and contracts. And the bottom script portion is responsible for importing departments. Now, in this case, I'm borrowing my source system based on the training data that we already have. If we go to the Tools Forever GitHub repository, Tools Forever BV, and then go to training, then we have our training materials, and we can go to lab files, lab 1, and then we have our source data. These are 4 CSV files that you can use as just data to create your own testing source system to play around. Now, in real life, you may want to use something else than a CSV file, but you may want to use a REST API, SOAP API, or maybe a database. So then you have to write your own logic to import that data. In this case, in this example, we're going to be using CSV. So, and there's also some script available for the persons, for this portion, and there's also a script available for that portion. Now, the only configuration that I have here is the location of my input, the path where the files are stored. That's the only configuration I really need. If I would use an API, then I would probably have different configuration parameters like an API key or API secret. And if I would use a database, I'll probably have a database server and a database name. So the configuration is what I really need, but I can create that myself, the configuration. I can build a custom configuration UI using the custom connector configuration. When I click on the wrench, this is what I've currently configured. Now, if you would do the same on an empty connector, you will get this completely filled up with all possible options there are to build your UI, and you will see the preview, all the possible controls that you can use. You have toggles, input boxes, drop downs, everything. Now I only need one. I need a input box to specify my path. That's the only one that I need here. So in this case, I've just narrowed it down to a single configuration control. And this one is the most important one, the key, because that's the one I'm gonna need as a reference in my PowerShell. That way I can read the data that you as a user specify here. So the rest is just formatting, right? So I apply this one and save, and then what happens is that this configuration tab will just magically appear, containing my my new configuration UI that I've just built. And in my case, I've already specified a path here. So when I'm configuring the connector, I can access the configuration by putting in this line. This is always the same because the configuration, $configuration, is being fed into the PowerShell execution pipeline by HelloID. It does that automatically. and it's fed as JSON data. So by converting it, it will become a real PowerShell object. And then this is that key that I need to reference. So I'm reading the key from my configuration, which then results in the path that I would really want. So continuing down the line, this is just the logic to read my comma separated file and do some logic on everything. And then at the end is where I output my person again. And you can see it needs to be delivered as JSON data again to HelloID. And I can do that in bulk. So you can feed an array of JSON data, so a JSON data as an array of objects, which is fine, and you can write output. Now make sure that this is the only thing you are outputting. If you need logging, you should use write verbose. Write verbose my logging. Don't use write output, as that will conflict with the data that HelloID expects. HelloID only expects JSON formatted data, otherwise it will go wrong and you will get an import failure. So make sure to do that. And just modify the logic so that it suits your needs. Now, whenever you finish with that, you can do your first import. And in my case, it imports 25 or 26 persons, and I've deleted one so that you can see on a subsequent import that one person no longer exists. And then you can see a removal on that. Now, when you've imported, when you've done your first import, you may find that all persons are blocked, maybe. And that's because we didn't do any mapping yet. We just imported, which delivers a lot of raw data for me, which is fine. This is just the data exactly as it comes in from your source system. But now it needs to be translated to HelloID data, and HelloID wants person in a certain format and the contracts as a list within the person also in a certain format. So we need to make sure that all the fields are being mapped. For instance, the family name is in my CSV file. I have a column last name. So my source system has last name, but I want to map that on the name.familyname component of my person document. And then you can look up a preview here, and you see that most of the stuff is nicely mapped. Now the HelloID document contains a lot more fields. We're not going to map everything because we simply don't have that source data. Make sure you map at least the fields that are required, because if you import a person and this field doesn't have a value, the person is going to be blocked, and you will see that here in your blocked person with listed along with the requirement that was not met. Now what you also should do, and what's done by default when you create a new source system, is that the threshold is automatically set to 1 and on the removal. So that means that if a subsequent import will contain less persons than the one that's already published, it will automatically block it, saying, hey, once one person has been deleted. It may be fine, but it won't be published automatically as a safeguard. So then, if that happens, you will see the source system with a red exclamation mark, and then you can manually approve your import here. It's a very important one because it safeguards you against API failures or data failures on your source system. So please keep in mind to do that properly. Yeah, that's about it. So a source system is all about importing the data, validating that the data is correct, then mapping it using person and contract, mapping it. Make sure you build your configuration UI to feed parameters to your import logic, and make sure you set your thresholds correctly. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.